In May 12, 1996, the US ambassador to the United Nations would shock the world with this statement.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. You know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
After this unhinged justification for the invasion of Iraq, she would go on to become the Secretary of State, even being honored with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Slaughtering 500,000 innocent children is seen as not only legitimate, but even virtuous? What do you think allows a country to even believe, much less say something like this? Prepare yourself, because this question is going to take us down a deep, dark rabbit hole. We're about to investigate a particularly sinister pattern of human behavior that utilizes language. This hidden thread ties just about every crisis you've ever seen all together. The Syrian crisis. The Iraq crisis. The Yemen crisis. The list can go on and on to seemingly no end. All of this was a result of the modern colonial project, much of which was legitimized with three simple terms. White man's burden. Words that bring up traumatic memories in some people, but perhaps hopefulness of a great mission in others. Regardless, these three words allowed for mass genocide, torture, and enslavement to happen, for the most part free of cost and accountability to the oppressors. Yet some dare to say, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me." No, you're gravely mistaken. Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words alone are capable of annihilating what entire civilizations call their home. This video is simply here to expose this side of human nature that is often left unnoticed, perhaps intentionally. First off, you must understand that the legitimization of oppression is done through the redefinition of language. Engrave this sentence on stone and never forget it. The legitimization of oppression is done through the redefinition of language. Take, for example, the United States of America. The US justifies its war crimes and oppression by defining who is a terrorist and who isn't a terrorist, therefore can legitimize who is deserving of torture and who isn't deserving of torture. In 1979, both American and British intelligence services agreed to redefine terrorism as the use of violence against civil interests to achieve political objectives. But what are civil interests? What are political objectives? This is for the Western powers to define, so they can point fingers at any country, call it a host of terrorism, send troops, and bomb it to hell. 500,000 children died. In the words of Madeleine Albright, it's worth it. The power of language is something we often overlook. It keeps us asleep to the dystopian reality around us because we've been taught a completely warped definition of reality ever since we were kids. Think about it. They've chanted, "We're living in modern times. This is the scientific age. This is the era of progress." We hear the same narratives, style of language, and buzzwords again and again ever since we were in school, studying from state-mandated curriculums and constantly being flooded with the same rhetoric by corporate media outlets. We end up believing that our beliefs are actually ours, even though they're often manufactured by the state and corporate media. Don't believe me? Just ask yourself, what is modern? What is barbaric? What is progress? You'll struggle to come up with definitions, and even if you do, are these definitions something you studied and rationally concluded? Or are these definitions what you're assuming because throughout your life you heard these words used in a certain context? Us as human beings don't actually understand the words we use. Almost everyone learned language through inference, assuming what words mean because of how they've been hearing them ever since they were a kid. Very few of us actually open the dictionary, study the history of language, and trace back words to their original definitions before they were manufactured and redefined to paint a distorted reality for the masses. It's time we undo this colonization. Prepare yourself, because this might just melt your mind. Human language is overpowered. They're an actual superpower in nature because unlike animals that are hardwired to act a certain way, we humans can actually override some of our natural behaviors and accrue knowledge. For example, wolves are hardwired to hunt for sheep. It goes to a farm and attacks a sheep. It sees a farmer come out but ignores him because he's far away. However, the farmer had a gun and shot the wolf non-fatally. The wolf scurries away, learns about the farmer and his ranged attacks, and doesn't come back. No wolf naturally understands the presence of farmers being a ranged enemy capable of inflicting fatal damage from tens, perhaps hundreds of meters. Animals learn knowledge from experience. Humans, however, don't need to live through it to learn from it. I can tell you about this farmer with a gun. If he shoots you, it will penetrate your skin and organs and can be fatal. Or I can tell you when you're driving, if you crash into a wall at 100 kilometers an hour, you will die from impact damage. I can convey realities to you that you've never experienced, and you can vividly imagine them as if you experienced them, and then prevent yourself or even engage yourself in those realities. Human language can convey experiences without you having to go through them, and that is one of the most powerful tools in existence. Generation to generation, experiences are conveyed one after another. Chemistry, physics, literature, they all keep stacking up. You teach your children who teach their children, and so on and so forth. We build towers that reach the clouds and submarines that reach hundreds of feet below sea level. The ability to convey knowledge through language instead of experience has allowed us to build our civilization. All the while bees are still making the same hives they made thousands of years ago, the badgers are still making burrows for thousands of years, and the birds are still making nests thousands of years later. All the while we're advancing quicker than we can keep up at this point. This is what sets us apart as human beings. Language, the tool that builds civilizations. All languages are wahi, divine revelation from the All-Knowing. In chapter 2, verse 31, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam alayhi salam the names of everything. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said regarding this verse that this means Adam alayhi salam was taught the words we humans use to understand reality. And one of his students was so shocked that he asked, even the terms of passing gas? And Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu affirmed, yes. Meaning that language was taught to the T with all its details to Adam alayhi salam. Let's just think about this for a second. Words encode meaning, a meaning that describes reality. These words taught to Adam alayhi salam, such as grapes, denoted a reality. There's the reality of a vine hanging from a tree with a bunch of spheres that have a purple skin but are translucent from the inside, with a sweet taste with a citrusy kick to it. All these attributes or characteristics are captured within one word, grape. You understand reality through these words. So all languages we hear today are simply slang born from Adam alayhi salam, different versions of the same original language. It is what allows human beings to be differentiated from animals because we can link realities to words. In fact, this ability separates us from angels, who we know speak in the Quran asking why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is creating humans on earth. Yet when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked them to name things, they said, Subhanak, la ilma lana. Glory be to you, we don't have that knowledge. Our language as human beings is different from the language of animals and the language of angels because we human beings have free will, the ability to think and act beyond a simple set of instructions. This has many implications on how free will functions, but that's a different topic. Just know our language is different, and that language is the middleman between human beings and reality. You can only convey reality to another human being through language. And if you don't understand language, you don't truly understand reality. Take Malcolm X for example. He dropped out before he could even make it to high school. Unable to write a single sentence and barely capable of reading one, he turned to a life of crime and eventually got arrested, spending 6.5 years in prison. He would come out of prison to become one of the most influential political activists in American history. How did a grade 8 dropout that could barely read or write basic sentences that turned to a life of crime and drugs get arrested only to end up becoming one of the most influential and articulate activists in American history? The secret lies in what he described to be the most decisive years of his life, the 6.5 years in prison. What did he do? He taught himself to read and write by copying the entire English dictionary, word by word, page by page, and committing every single definition to memory. A serious endeavor to understand language and its true definitions according to the dictionary, rather than warped and manufactured definitions according to the media. The result? A man that reigned superior to his opponents, capable of conveying ideas and realities to the masses and orchestrating a social movement that completely shifted the course of American history. Treasure this lesson for life. That if you don't have a cast iron solid definition of what a word means, then you don't understand it, nor do you understand the reality you're speaking of. I'm not saying anyone who doesn't precisely understand the definition of every single word is stupid. Over 99% of people on the planet use language from inference, not precise understanding. Therefore, we're all stupid in that sense. We didn't study every single one of the words we use and what their true meanings are. No, we use these words from what we hear others using in a similar context, and therefore infer what the meaning is, which tells you a lot on how you can brainwash the entire perception of a human being and how he or she views the world simply by hijacking a few crucial terms. But surely nobody would ever do that, right? This is where things get dangerous. I think I'm going to call this chapter Colonization Through Language. Language is the bridge that connects the human being to reality. You may experience reality without language, but you cannot understand it. If someone were to sit on that bridge and sway it however they wish, they can quite literally control how human beings perceive reality. Their entire perception of reality can be manufactured and controlled simply by redefining a few foundational terms. Now, we aren't the first ones to figure this out. The enemies of Islam have figured this out a long time ago, and they've been utilizing it heavily. A perfect example of this is in a document published by the anti-Islamic think tank known as RAND. This document, called Civil Democratic Islam, clearly states that the Muslim world sees democracy and Sharia as conflicting. The goal was to redefine democracy and fit it into the Sharia, and then label anybody that says democracy is haram or against the Sharia as radical fundamentalists. It's unfortunate to see how well they succeeded in colonizing the Muslimin with these tactics, where now calling democracy haram is seen as a dangerous view. If you go through the document, you'll realize these Islamophobes have also redefined human rights, redefined hijab, redefined Islamic criminal punishments, and most importantly, they've gone to great lengths to redefine the Islamic State. Because that Islamic State is the greatest threat to the New World Order. It violates every single definition they've spent so long curating. It is capable of undoing centuries of intellectual colonization that the West has actively been doing on the Muslims. You should check out my daunting, lengthy video on secularism to understand this point better, because it is absolutely crucial. Link is in the description. One powerful example of redefinition of words against Muslims was what I mentioned at the start of the video. The 1979 international seminar with British and American intelligence services, who agreed to redefine terrorism as the use of violence against civil interests to achieve political objectives. Funnily enough, it is these same states that define what is violence and what are civil interests, therefore can label whoever they want as being a terrorist and not being a terrorist. Just like they did with the assassination of Indira Gandhi, calling it a terrorist act. But the assassination of John F. Kennedy, no, that was just a crime. Just like they did again in 2001 when the War on Terror campaign allowed the United States to literally set up bases across the world in these Muslim countries, treating the world like it's their backyard. Why, you ask? Because we need to hunt down these terrorists. Things should start clicking in your head at this point. Just redefining terrorism alone allowed the United States of America to ravage the entire Middle East, countless innocent lives lost, countries destroyed and destabilized, populations silenced and slaughtered. Isn't it time for us to break out of our ignorance? Isn't it time for us to wake up? This video you've just watched was heavily inspired by Sheikh Taqiuddin al-Nabhani's book, Tafkir, or Thinking. It is said that Sheikh Taqiuddin al-Nabhani wrote this 121-page book in a single night. This man is no joke. This video is only an explanation of about 2 pages, if even that, from the 121 pages of the book, and I don't even do justice to those 2 pages. That should give you an idea of how much knowledge you are missing out on. But I don't recommend this book to anyone because it's far too difficult to read on your own. Trust me, I have a teacher that's teaching it to me slowly and steadily. What I will give you, however, is the gift I mentioned earlier. Access to a document that will get you started on the journey of decolonization, which then will help you understand the world for what it is instead of what you assume it to be. Thank you for watching this video to the end. It means a lot to me, especially if you could like and subscribe. It takes a few seconds, but again, it's indispensable to anybody that does creation, right? And it costs almost nothing to the viewer. And as always, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.